Welcome to this video where we will talk about the movie The Final Destination. We will begin by exploring the movie storyline, summarizing its plot and discuss the cast and characters. Then we will take a closer look at the film production detail and box office performance. Finally, we will share review and the audience reaction to give you a well-rounded perspective. Let's get started. Final Destination 3 ending explaining. The Final Destination movie have craved out their own space in the horror top share because of their careful subversion of the genre topics, including a traditional antagonist, the film's use of the death as the unrelenting force opposing the protagonist add a sense of inevitability to the narrative. In 2006, Final Destination 3, a high school graduate named Wendy Christensen serves as the character that gets the premonitions, managed to save herself and a few of her friends, and then eventually set off a chain of events where those friendly start to die one by one. Realizing that she will be the last one to die, Wendy races again, time to break the partner and free herself from the prospect of the immunity death. Here is everything you need to know about the ending of Final Destination 3. Spoiling ahead. Final Destination 3 Plot synopsis. The film begins as a Wendy, her boyfriend Jason, and their friends Kevin, and the career stroll around in an amusement park in Pennsylvania, where the most popular ride in the Devil's Fight roller coaster. Jason, Carrier, and the Kevin are the looking forward to riding it, but Wendy feels a deep sense of dread, as if something horrible is about to happen. She gets a premonition of all the trader drawing to horrible ways after the hydraulic of the roller coaster fails. By let of the train worried for her, Kevin also gets off. A few other included Ashlina Halprin, Frankia Cheeks, Levi Stammer, and the Ian McKinley also get off during the competition deposit their attempts to get to her. Jason and Carrier are unable to do so and die in the same ways Wendy saw in her promotion. Wendy subsequently has an emotional breakdown and plays to be let off the train. Worried for her, Kevin also gets off. Ashley Fruit, Aislinn Halprin, Frankia Cheeks, Lace Romer, Aaron Ulmer, and the Ian MC Candy also get off during the competition, deposit their attempts to get to her. Jason and the career are unable to do and die in the same way as Wendy saw in her promotion. What Wendy has not realized is that her sister Julia and one of the friends were also on the train and get off. Some time passes and it is revealed that Wendy has isolated herself from her friends and the family, filled with grief for Jason as well as shame and the guilt that it does not save him. That she could not save him. She decides not to attend the graduation ceremony. She runs into Kevin, who tells her about Alex Browning from the first Final Destination film and Flight 180, revealing that she is not the first person to whom this has happened. Intentional skeptical, Wendy comes to believe it to be true when the survivors start dying in the same order saw them die in her. Intentionally skeptical, Wendy comes to believe it to be true when the survivors start dying in the same order she saw them die in her promotion. Moreover, their deaths are hinted at in the last picture she looks of them with her camera. Alicia Freud and the Ashlina Halpern and the burden alive on the training flats. In Wendy photos, their pairs flame red because of too much exposure in the pictures. Frankie is seen with a fan behind his head in the Wendy photo. Half of his head gets chopped off by the motor from the Kevin car. Louis Remote is standing close to the school mascot. Certain is the Wendy photo. The mascot has a pair of the skimators. Wendy and the Kevin visit the school gym to warn Levis and watch him die in front of them as the decorative simulator fall on the Bowflex machine Law has been using, and his head is the squared between Law's feet. Wendy and the Kevin then try to convince Aaron and the Ian, both of whom work at a dye store, about their impending death. But like Louis before them, they do not believe that Wendy and Kevin are saying. In Wendy photo, Kevin is standing under a kill sign while pointing a toy gun at the Aaron. The latter has her middle finger up in a rudder gesture with the nail painted black. Wendy realizes that Ayn is supposed to be killed by falling wonders, takes that the are pointed like the sign from the photo and it tickles him in time, saving his life. However, Aaron is killed by a nail gun after realizing that Julia and her friend are to survive as well, and they are supposed to die because of a horror. Wendy rushed to the McLean Terry. Wendy realized that Ayn is supposed to be killed by falling wonders, stick that pointed like the sign from the photo and it trickles him in time, saving his life. However, Iran is killed by a nail gun after realizing that Julia and her friends are the survivor as well, and they are supposed to die because of a horse. Wendy rushes to the McLean tree. Ceremonial ferry they had the attending Kavni is there as well. Working security, Wendy and the Kevin agree that is now time to look at their photos and see how they are supposed to die. For Wendy, it turns out that even will be show how included and Kevin is fated to be the killed by Forward. Final Destination 3 ending to Wendy, Kevin and the Julia die or live. After Wendy, Kevin and the Julia survive the cycle of death, the film skipped 5 months. By then, Wendy has moved to a new city and lives with her roommate. Once more, she starts to feel that sense of death while traveling by the subway with her roommate and the later friends. She runs into Julia has come to see her earlier than they expected. Suddenly, she noticed that the Kevin is also there. When she and the Julia approach him to talk, when she and Julia approach him to ask what he is doing there, he reveals that he was in the city for a game. This series of the coincidence make Wendy realize that death has come for them. This subway, train details and the carriage ensure Julia, Kevin and the Wendy die in the same order as they were supposed to on the roller coaster. However, it revealed that it was a premonition, that real thing is yet to happen. The three survive make when attempts to stop the train or get out, but this is not a roller coaster ride that has not started yet. It is a subway train rushing toward its town at full speed. The film ends there without offering any detail on their fates. Winstead Wendy Christensen is perhaps the more impactful protagonist in the interior series, and her fact has become a matter of the mud decisions. Winstead herself believes that is up for rebel. But given the circumstance in which Wendy, Kevin and the Julia are trapped, it's impossible for them to survive, and their deaths are the foreground throughout the scene. The singer in the subway train performs Turn Around Look at Me, an eerie song detonation to the audience that death aware these characters. Moreover, the subway announcement constantly informed Wendy that this is the end of the line, again implying that she is going to die on that train. Wendy and Kevin save Julia from being dragged to her death by a runaway horse, while Wendy saves Kevin from the firework. Ayn is supposed to case Wendy's death because he blamed for her that happened to Iran, but as Lan is killed inside, Wendy, Kevin and the Julia conclude the death cycle not realizing that it can simply start all over again. Are there alternate ending to Final Destination 3? Yes, there are three alternate ending to Final Destination 3. Beside the theatrical ending in one, the film ends with the Wendy death in the subway, and it is never revealed to be a promotion. In another afterland death, Wendy, Julia and the camel leave the fairground to work, but not before Wendy throws away her camera and tries to destroy it. But as they are leaving, the camera takes on more photo of them, implying that they are still part of that plane and will die in the manners they are in that last. Ending to Final Destination 3 beside the theatrical ending. In one, the film ends with the Wendy death in the subway and it is never revealed to be a promotion. In another afterland death, Wendy, Julia and the Kevin leave the fairground together, but not before Wendy throws away her camera and tries to destroy it. But as they are leaving, his camera takes on more photo of them, implying that they are still part of that plane and will die in the manners they are in that last photograph. Developed like a parody, the final ending is the intentional and the alternate being Wendy gets off the roller coaster with the Jason, Kevin and the career. All four of them survive and go on to lead and full lives. Careering before up with the Kevin and their tents, briefly for a year before becoming a groups for Doctor Without Border. Kevin develops and the unhealthy obsessions with the Wendy and the briefly in lies in the military. Jason become a cult leader. As for Wendy, she embarrassed high gifts and become a professional psycho under the Final Destination 3. Final Destination 3, directed by James Wong, executive producer by Tomby Embrick, Richard Banner, Matt Mori, writing by Galen Morrison, James Wong, based on characters created by Jeffrey Reddick, starting Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ryan Merriman, music by Shirley Walker, cinematography Robert M.C. Legend, edit by Chesty William, Heart 8 Pictures, Particle Pictures. Final Destination 3 is a 2006 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wong. It's the third installment in the Final Destination film series. Wong and the Glenn Morgan, who worked on the franchise's first film, wrote the screenplay. Final Destination 3 stars Melly Elizabeth Winstead and the Ryan Merriman and takes place 5 years after. Note: the first film, Winstead plays Wendy Christensen, a teenager who has a promotion at a roller coaster. She and her classmate are reading well drill, although she saves some of them. That being hunting to the survives, Wendy realizing the photographs she took at the amusement park connects clued about her customer's death. She tries to use the knowledge to save the rest of them. The film development began shortly after the release of Final Destination 2 2003. Jeffrey Reddick, creator of the franchise and co-writer of the first two films, did not return for the third one. Unlike the second film, the being development being shortly after release of Final Destination 2 2003, Jeffrey Reddick, creator of the franchise and a co-writer of the first two films, did not return for the third one, unlike the second one, which was a sequel to the first. The producer envisioned Final Destination 3 as a stand-alone film. The idea of featuring a roller coaster derailment as the opening scenes. Dister came for the New Line Cinema. Execute Richard Bryan. From the beginning, Wong and the Morrison saw control as a major theme in the film. Casting being in March 2005. In conclude in April. Like the previous installment, it was filmed Vancouver, Canada. The first 2 weeks of 3 months shoot were spent filming the roller coaster derailments. Following its premiere at the Gunsman Chinese Theatre on 2 February 2006, the film was released in the cinema in the United States on the 10 February 2006. Following its premiere at the Gunman's Chinese Theatres on 2 February 2006, the film was released in the cinema in the United States on 10 February 2006. The DVD release on the 25 July 2006 included commentaries, documentaries, a deleted scene, and an animated video. A special editing DVD called Thrill Rider Editing includes a features called Chooses Their Fate, which act as an inverted film, allowing viewers to make decisions. The special point in the film that alter the course of the story. Final Destination 3 revealed a mixed critical response. Some critics called the film formulaic and said it brought nothing to new the franchise, while others praised it for being enjoyable and fulfilling its audience expectations. The death scene involving tanning beds and a nail gun, as well as Winstead's performance, attract positive comments from viewers. Decision at the specific point in the film that altered the course of the story. Final Destination 3 revealed a mixed critical response. Some critics called the film for musical and said it brought nothing new to franchise, while others praised for being enjoyable and fulfilling its audience expectations. The death scenes involving tanning beds and a nail gun, as well as Winstead's performance, attacked positive comments from the viewers. The film was a financial success and with box office received of the nearly $180 million, the highest grossing installment in the franchise at the time. High school student Wendy Christopher visit and the amusement park for a non-senior class field trip, along with her boyfriend Jason Weiss, her best friend Carrie Drell, and Carrie's boyfriend Kevin Finchers. As they board the Devil Flight roller coaster, Wendy has a premonition that the hydraulic security, the set belts, and the coaster car will fail during the ride, killing everyone on board. She panics and a fight breaks out, and the survival people leave or are fog of the ride, included the Kevin, best friend Alicia Freud, and the Shelina helpline. Elements Frank Chicks, all that Lewis Romert and the goth couple, Law McLeana and the Aaron Omer. Moments later, the roll coaster details and the kills the repairing passengers leave Wendy distraught. Survival weeks later, Kevin tells Wendy about the explanation of the Flight 180 and the substance death of the survive. Final Destination 3 is a 2006 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wong. It's the third installment in the Final Destination film series. Wong and Galen Morgan, who work on the franchise's first film, wrote the screenplay. Final Destination 3 starred Mary Elizabeth Winstead and the Ryan Merriman and take place 5 years after the first film. Winstead plays Wendy Christensen, a teenager who has a premonition that a roller coaster she and her classmate are riding will derail. Although she saves some of them, death beings hunting the survives. When realized photographs she took at the amusement park contain clues about her classmate death, she tries to use the knowledge to save the rest of them. The film development begins shortly after the release of Final Destination 2, 2003. Jeffrey Reddick, creator of the franchise and a co-writer of the first two films, did not return for the third one. Unlike the second film, the film development began shortly after release of Final Destination 2, 2003. Jeffrey Reddick, creator of the franchise and a co-writer of the first two films, did not return for the third one. Unlike the second film, which was a sequel to the first. The producer evidenced Final Destination 3 as a start-alone film. The idea of featuring a roller coaster derailment as the opening scenes Dister came from New Line Cinema. Execute Richard Bryan. From the beginning, Wong and the Morgan saw control as a major them in the film. Casting began in March 2005 and the conclude in April. Like the previous two installments, it was filmed in the Vancouver, Canada. The first 2 weeks of the 3 months shoot were spent filming the roller coaster determined. Following its premiere at the Gunsman Chinese theaters on 2 February 2006, the film was released in the cinema in the United States on the 10 February 2006. The DVD release on following its premiere at the Gunsman Chinese theater on 2 February 2006. The film was released in cinema in the United States on the 10 February 2006. The DVD release on 25 July 2006. Included commentaries, documentaries, a deleted scene and an animated videos. A special editing DVD called the Thrill Ride Editing include a features called Choose Their Fate, which act an interactive film, allowing viewers to make decisions at the specific points in the film that alter the course of the story. Final Destination 3 received a mixed critical response. Some critics called the film formulaic and said it brought nothing new in the franchise, while others praised it for being enjoyable and fulfilling in audience expectations. The death scenes involving tanning, bats and the nail gun, as well as Western performance attract positive comments from reviewers. Final Destination 3 received a mixed critical response. Some critics called the film formulaic and said it brought nothing new to the franchise, while others praised it for being enjoyable and fulfilling its audience expectations. The death scenes involving tanning beds and the nail gun, as well as Western performance attract positive comments from the viewers. The film was a financial success with box office receptive of nearly $180 million, the highest grossing installment in the franchise at the time. High school student Wendy Christensen visits a amusement park for a senior class field trip along with her boyfriend Jason Weiss, her best friend Carrie Dreal, and the Carrie boyfriend Kevin Fisker. As they board the Devil's Flight roller coaster, Wendy has a premonition that the hydraulic series, the seat belts, and the coaster car will fail during the ride, killing everyone on board. She panics and a fight breaks out, and survival people leave for the first of their ride included Kevin, best friend Ashelia Freud, and the Ashelina Halprin, Almond Frank Jickis, athlete Lost Romers, and the goth couple, Lon McLeany and the Anne Omer, Lan Amsiclini and the Aaron Almere. Moments later, the roller coaster derailed and they killed the remaining passenger Levin Wendy Disturber. Moments later, the roller coaster derails and kills the remaining passengers, leaving Wendy devastated. Several weeks later, Kevin tells Wendy about the explanation of Flight 180 and the subsequent death of the survived, believing they may be in a similar situation, thinking even in the mocking her. Wendy dismisses his theaters. Later, Ashlina and the Ashland are burned to death after being trapped in the muffling training pads. Now convinced that death is stalking them, Wendy and Kevin set out to save the remaining survivors. Using arms hiding in the photographs, Wendy took the night of the roller coaster crash. Frankie dies when a runway truck hits a car behind him, crushed the motor to fly out of the vehicles and the slight back of his head. The next day, they are to save Lewis at the gym, but they says does not believe them shuttle before his head is crushed by two feet. They find Lan and Anne working at a hardware store and Buzz saves Lan from being impaled by falling wooden takes, but Anne falls. Frankie dies when a runway truck hits a car behind him, causing the motor to fly out of the vehicles and the slide to back off his head. The next day, they try to save Lewis at the gym, but he says he does not believe them shortly before his head is crushed by two weights. The find is a Lan and the Anne working at a hardware store, and Wendy saves Lan from being impaled by falling wooden stick. But Anne falls on a nail gun and is shot repeatedly through the head. Wendy and Kevin are questioned by the police, then released, assuming whoever was next must already be dead. They decide to ensure their own safety as she leaves the stations. Wendy is stalked by a grief-taker Lon. Wendy learns that her sister Julia and a friend also escaped the roller coaster crash, and she and Kevin rush to save them. They prevent Julia and being impaled on a harrow, but Julia's friend Perry Manuel is impaled by a. Wendy learns that her sister Julia and her friend also escaped the roller coaster crash, and she and Kevin rush to save them. They prevent Julia from being impaled on a harrow, but Julia's friend Perry Manuel is impaled by a flagger moments later. Wendy saves Kevin from an exploding piranha monster and is confused by a drenched lawn, and is confronted by a drenched lawn, who blames her for the errant death. The unstable firework cannons first at the Wendy but she ducks, and they hit a cherry picker behind lawn, which falls and they crush him in half, leading Wendy to believe she has cheated death. 5 months later, Wendy experiences more arms while riding on a subway with her roommate, Laura, and her friend Sean. As Wendy is about to deter Mark, she sees Julia entering the sub and they decide to stay. She later noting Kevin sitting at the back as the two of them are talking. The train drill and everyone on board is killed except Wendy. High school student Wendy Christensen visits the amusement park for a senior calls for a trip along with her boyfriend Jason Verse, his boyfriend Career Drian, and the Carrie's boyfriend Kevin Finchers as they board the Devil's Flight roller coaster. Wendy has a premonition that the hydraulics securing the seat belt and coaster car will fail during the ride, killing everyone on board. She panics and a fight breaks out, and the survival people leaves or forced off the ride included Kevin, best friend Ashelia Freud, and the Ashelina Halpern, Illumines Frankie Chickies, all thought Lewis Stromer and the goth couple, Lon MC Calney and the Iron Almer. Moments later, the roller coaster detours and the kills the remaining passengers, leaving Wendy devastated. Several weeks later, Cammy tells Wendy about the expectations of the flight 180 and the subsequent death of the survived, believing them be in a similar situation, thinking Cammy is the making her. Wendy dismisses his theory. Later, Ashleigh and the Ashleyan are burned to death after being trapped in the maleficent tanning beds. Now convinced that death is taking them, Wendy and the Kevin set out to save the remaining survivor using arms hidden in the photographs Wendy took the night of the roller coaster crash. Frankie dies when a runway truck hits a car behind him, using the motor to fly out of the vehicles and this leak the back of his head. The next day, they try to save Lois at the gym, but he says does not believe them shortly before his head is crushed by two weights. They find Lon and the aunt working at a hardware store and Wendy saves her from being impaled by falling wooden stakes. Frankie dies when a runway truck hits a car behind him, causing the motor to fly out of the vehicles and slick the back of his neck and the slick back of his head. The next day they try to save Lewis at the gym, but he says he does not believe them shortly before his head is crushed by two weights. They find Lon and the Aaron working at a hardware store and Wendy saves Lon from being impaled by falling wooden stakes, but unfalls on a nail gun and is shot repeatedly through the head. Wendy and the Kevin are questioned by the police and released. Amusing, however, Wozniak must already be dead. They decide to ensure that own safety. As they leave the station, Wendy is stalked by a grief-stricken Lon. Wendy learns that her sister Julia and a friend also escaped the roller coaster crash, and she and the Kevin rush to save them. They prevent Julia from being impaled on a harrow, but Julia's friend Perry Manworking is impaled by a Wendy learns that her sister Julia and a friend also escaped the roller coaster crash, and she and the Kevin rush to save them. They prevent Julia from being impaled on a harrow, but Julia's friend Perry Manwork is impaled by a flag rope moments later. Wendy saves Kevin from an exploding prona coaster and is confronted by a drunk Lon. Anne is comforted by a drunk Lon, who blames her for Anne's death. The unstable firework can once fire at the Wendy, but she ducks and they hit a cherry pickers behind Lon. She falls and he crushes him in half, landing Wendy to believe she has cheated death. Wendy experiences more among while riding on a subway with her roommate Laura and her friend Sean. As Wendy is about to dismiss, she sees Julia entering the sub and they decide to see. She later notices Kevin sitting at the back. As the two of them are talking, the train details are the train derails and everyone on board is killed, except Wendy. Soon after, Wendy is hit by another train. It turns out this is another premonition and Wendy. Kevin and Julia try to stop the train in vain. The screen cuts to black followed by the sound of the screen metal. Templates detail: Mary Elizabeth Winstead as a Wendy Christensen, Ryan Merriman as a Kevin features, Chris Lemage as a Len MC Kelly, Alex Johnson as a Iran Almer, Sam Aston as a Frankie Cheeks, Jesse Smoss and a Jason Weiss, Gina Holden as a Career Drill, Texas Battle as a Lewis Rimmer, Jalen Simmons are the Ashleigh Fruit, Crystal Lowe as the Ashlina Helprine, Amanda Crew as the Julia Christens. Three critical theories about the Final Destination French have been decided in the scholar work. Three critical theories about the Final Destination French have been discussed in the scholar work. It has been framed as a postmodern horror franchise that, like the Steam franchise, self-conscious refers to the history of horror cinema and the reward viewers for their knowledge. Second, the film particularly The Final Destination 2009 and Final Destination 5 2011 have been examined for their visual effect. Third, the franchise has been criticized for being cycling and reductive. For example, film studio scholar Reynold Humors dismissed the franchise as the off-curtains nonsense. For only idea is that is an agency that has a plan for each of us. Antonia Brinkema Final Destination film, according to Media Studio, the Christopher by their move away from the typical horror antagonist and toward the certainty and the inverity of the death. This makes them invest with most other horror films, which require a monster Final Destination film, depart future from the other horror film, even those among the teenagers, in that a family narrative is lacking, and there are not hunting of any kid. As well, there is no security Neither the pursuit of the pleasure in the slasher convert of easy bodies, access nor the most reality of the sexual difference. Brink argues the film are not about seeking pleasure like typical slasher film. Instead, they are about the advance of the pain and the death. They are fundamentally better period and sad, and display the inability of the characters to feel pleasure. In their film Death become its own cause, nor the monstrosity of sexual difference. Brinkma argued the film are not about seeking pleasure like typical slasher film. Instead, they are not about the evidence of pain and death. They are fundamental better, paranoid and the sad, and display the inability of the characters to feel pleasure. In this film, death becomes its own cause. The premature of the roller coaster determined in the Final Destination 3 is out. In the Final Destination 3 is without coaster to the cast. The evidence of that by some characters ground the necessity of their death, especially the order in which they would have died on the roller coaster, thus death list or the death design. Its elite Final Destination 3 spent as music time impacting death as they displayed them, allow her to understand the death. But this is inevitable to later to save her friends. In the franchise film, Bekma says on must closer read to survive for a spell, and yet reading changes absolutely nothing at all. The characters mate as well, nor the most reality of sexual difference. Brickma argue the film are not about seeking pleasure like typical slasher film. Instead, they are about the evidence of pain and the death. They are fundamentally better period and sad, and they display the inability of the characters to feel pleasure. In these films that become its own cause, the promotion of the roller coaster determined in the Final Destination 3 is without constant or the cause. The evidence of that by some characters ground the necessity of their death, especially the order in which they would have died on the roller coaster, thus that list or the death design or release. Final Destination 3 spend as much time interpreting death as they display them. Wendy close analysis of the photographs allow her to understand the death, but this is the inability to later to save her friend. In the franchise film, Brinkma says on must closely read to survive for a spell, and yet reading change absolutely nothing at all. Lon Cornish, a film studio scholar, argued the series mark a key departure from slasher norma is that death itself become the villain. Final Destination film draw influence from the slasher cinema, but the franchise action sequence included Final Destination 3 roller coaster determined drew the action and the distress cinema. For the crunchies, the franchise must a new slasher film, subdued because the deaths are the exactly violent and the executed, and number can happy at once, and all of them are the inevitability. He calls the film grand slasher. Other grand slasher include the film in the Saw and the Cube franchise. A notable features of the Final Destination film is the theater or the tipping point logic of character death. Norwich framed the complex death sequence in the Final Destination film as the game's counterpart or the puzzle. In the Final Destination film as the death games, counterparts or puzzles. A notable features of the Final Destination film is the third hole or tipping point logic of character's death. Cronch filmed the complex death sequence in the Final Destination film as death games, counterparts or the puzzles in which they are only loser. He compares his sequence to Rue, Goldberg machines and the Grand Giggle and the Mousetrap board game. Brickma select the death of the Shlilia and the Ashland, the Final Destination 3, at the as epitomizing the series. Death sequence the characters that are the brought about by a series of the natural cats that will ultimately lead to their conflict ends. These include the placing of a drink, a rifling throw of CDS, and ill chooses stop. The scene uses logic of temperature, color, and the light to realize the characters that and the allow Wendy. The scene uses logic of the temperature, color, and the light to realize the character's death and to allow Wendy to recognize the theaters they face. An example of the later tipping point at which the characters can no longer escape Oscar when a core track is the no or the substance. It is blown by an air condition until that is reactive by the increasing heat. Conrich identified the roller coaster determinants as the example of the franchise focus on the mobility in that sequence. He argued that the theme park, ridden and the horror cinema are the maturely influent, the former draw from the franchise accept of the latter, while the latter draw from the theatrical and the ignite of them former. The film original title Cheating Death Final Destination 3 changed during development, carrying Perry and the Von Zeit, Perry Productions and the Wong and the Morgan on that co-producer Final Destination returned to the produce Final Destination 3 with the particle pictures and the maintained pictures. Intellian the film was to be filmed in 3D. But this was abandoned. Morrison said it was the franchise reasons and because he believed fire and the blood effect would not be shown properly through the read filter of the analyzed 3D system. The idea of using a roller coaster detail line as the opening scenes. This came from the New Line Cinema, executing Richard Brian and was not inspired by the Big Thunder's Morton Riddle incident from 2003 when a determined occurred that the Crusher Rider, the Omag, 1976 was the inspiration to the depict. The Omen 1976 was the inspirations to the depth. The idea of using roller coaster determined as the opening scenes. This came from the New Line Cinema executive Richard Brian and was not inspired by the Big Thunder's Morton Reland incident from 2003 when a determined occurred that he crushed a writer. The Omega 1976 was the inspiration to depict death on scene in the photographs. Morrison said he searched the SL of the shot on the sunset 4 days for the inspiration for the end hard work, store death. Loss of control is a major theme he had and the wrong and the in cover from the film for the very beginning. Both Wendy, who is a fear of losing control, and the roller coaster exemplary this. He said psychological have confirmed. One reason some people are afraid of riding a roller coaster is because they have no control over it, and that happened to them. Lan Cornish, a film studio scholar, argued the series mark a key departure from the slasher norma is that death itself become the villain. Final Destination film draw influence from the slasher cinema, but the franchise action sequence included Final Destination 3 roller coaster determined draw for the action and the distress cinema. For Crunch, the franchise mark a new slasher film subgenre because the deaths are extremely violent and the axis and number can happy at once and all of them are invertible. He calls the film Grand Slasher. Other Grand Slasher include the film in the Saw and Cube franchise. A notable features of the Final Destination film is the theatrical or tipping point logic of the character death. Conrich framed the complex death sequence in Final Destination film as that games, contraptions or puzzle. A notable features of the Final Destination film is the theater horror or tipping point logic of the character's death. Conrich filmed the complex death sequence in the Final Destination film as the death games, contrapts of the puzzle in which they are only loser. He compares the sequence to Rube Goldberg machines, the Grand Gonals and the Monster board games. Brinkman select the death of the Alicia and the Elysian from the Final Destination 3 as emphasize the series death sequence. The characters' deaths are brought about by a series of natural gestures, a set of concrete that will ultimately lead to their conflicting ends. These include the packing of a drink, the reflecting throw of CDS, and ill-chosen dropout. The scene was logic of the temperature, color, and the light to realize the character's death and to allow Wendy to reflecting throw of the CDS and ill-chosen doorstop. The scene uses logic of the temperature, color, and the light to realize the character's death and they allow Wendy to recognize the theaters they face. An example of the later tipping point at which the characters can no longer escape. Oscar when a court rack is the no on that Sanders. When a court rake is knocked on the subbeds, it is blown by an air condition until that is active by the increasing heat. Conscious identifies the roller coaster determinants as an example of the franchise focus on the mobility in death sequence. He argued that the theme park, reader and the horror cinema are mentally influential. The former draw from the frantic escape of the latter, while the latter draw from the theatrical and the knight of them former. Final Destination 3 was originally the last part of the trilogy and had been in development since the release of Final Destination 2. Final Destination 2 franchise creator Jerry F. Reddick and one of the co-writers of the first two films did not return for the third installment. Director James Wong said that unlike the second film, which was closely tied to the first and they continue its story, the producer always envisaged Final Destination 3 as a stand-alone sequel featuring new characters. He said really felt that the idea of Final Destination or the fact that can visit you and can cheat death could happen to anyone. By not using characters for the first film, the producer could have a plot with the new characters who would be unaware what was happening to them and they react according. The film original Little Cheating Death, Final Destination 3, changing during development, Caring Pretty and the Wand, Zadie Zips, Piri Production and the Wong and the Merchant on Hard 8 Pictures, the co-producer Final Destination returned to the produce Final Destination 3 with the practical pictures and the maintained pictures. In Italy, the film was to be filmed in the 3D, but this was abandoned. Morrison said it was for franchise reason and because the belief for and the blood effect would not be shown properly through the rate filter of the analyzed 3D systems. The idea of using a roller coaster determined as the opening scenes district came of the New Line Cinema executed Richard Baryan and was not inspired by the Big Thunder's Mountain ridiculous incident from the 2003 when a determined oxer that crashed a ride. The idea of using a roller coaster determined as the opening the scene district came for New Cinema executive Richard Baryan and was not inspired by the Big Thunder Mountain Brilliant incident from 2003 when a determined Oscar that the crusher ride Deuman 1976 was the inspiration to direct Death Omens in photographs. Morrigan said he scared the Alice of the store and the sunset for days for inspiration for an hardware store death. Loss of control is a major them he and Wong and the invest for them film for very beginning. Both Wendy Wu's fear of losing control and the roller coaster exemplary his. He said psychological have confirmed one reason some people are afraid of riding a roller coaster is because they have no control over it and what happens to them. During the casting process, Wong sound across the could portray the main characters he heroic individual with the realistic qualities. Piri has helped in sometimes saying that for the Wendy and the Kevin characters they look for actors who had the charisma of the movie star but were not so ridiculously revered that you could not feel like you might know them. They took great care casting the sporting characters who were considered as implied to the film as the main characters. On 21 March 2005, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and the Ryan Merriman, co-star of The Ring 2 2005, were cast as Wendy Christensen and Kevin Features. Winstead, who had an audience for the second film, Final Destination, won the role because her portrayal of the character's emotion impressed Wong and the Morgan. Wong said he had originally insight Wendy to be a pracky blonde and the rework. On 21 March 2005, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and the Ryan Merriman, co-star of The Ring 2 2005, were cast and the Wendy Christensen and the Kevin Finchers. Winstead, who had the audition for the second film Destination, won the role because her portrayal of the character emotions impressed Wong and the Morgan. Wong said he had originally inspired Wendy to be a pecky blonde and they reworked the character slightly after Winstead was selected. Wong believed the actors were right for their roles. He felt Winstead brought a kind of the substance to her role as the Wendy and though her character is deeply affected by the accident, his strength allowed her to remain in control. Wong said when the Merman arrived to auditions, he was sure he was the right guy to play Kevin. He described the character as the king of gay you want to hang out with. You goofy best buddy but also someone who could rise to the oceans and become a hero. On 9 April 2005, Chris Lamich and the Eliza Johnson were cast as the growth couple Lan Emkelina and the Aaron Elmer. Johnson, who was starting in the Canadian television series Instant Star 2004 to 2008, and the audition to play Wendy's sister Julia, that role later went to Amanda Crew, who originally auditioned to the play Erin. Johnson said she wore a rocker jacket during her second reading and was in a bad mood. As she was leaving, the filmmakers called her back to read some of Erin's Socratic dialogues in a sequence. Johnson threw her dry scenes of humor, which the filmmaker caught. Help her by land the part of his role. Let me say it, Lon. Spot some interesting fact that seemed to be just right there on the tips of the fingers. He reached most of the land information and during read, through often asked Morrison about the land fact. Morrison wrote Limer's notice and giving him URLs. Research the information land gives out. Final Destination 3. Cut a twist ending that would have changed the whole franchise. Final Destination 3 very much stuck to the formula that had proven successful in the other two Final Destination movies, but the original ending would have offered a game-changing twist. The third movie in the Final Destination franchise continued the idea of a protagonist have a version of the discard, a roller coaster accident in this case, saving herself and others from the certain death, only for that to target them to ensure it never cheated. Final Destination 3 was also the first movie in the horror franchise to not feature any of the survivors from the previous movie, as Final Destination 2 saw the return of the Clever River, alliterated the soul. Final Destination 3 was also the first movie in the horror franchise to not feature any of the survivors from the previous movie, as Final Destination 2 saw the return of the Clever Reviews, alliterators, the sole survivor of the first movie. As it turns out, there were originally plans to include a similar bit of the casting that would have been a sin's surprise for more in the final scenes, while also hammering home just how determined death is to climb every life that escapes its grasp. Final Destination 3 was going to concert to the Final Destination 2, while Final Destination Bloodlines concert the franchise in some interesting ways. Final Destination 3 originally entry near connected to Final Destination 2, with the comes from the Kimberly A. Cook and offers Becky Michaels Landis. Final Destination 3 conclude with the Wendy Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Final Destination 3 conclude with the Wendy Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Julia Amanda Crew, and the Camin Ryan Merriman having seemingly beaten death, designed only to randomly bump into each other months later on a subway, where they are presemble all kind when the train derails. Where they are presembles all kind when they are train derails. While they were unable to pull off the exciting twist in the Final Destination 3, Perry revealed that they knew it was a thriller idea for the franchise that could have and would be used in the future. According to producer Karen Perry, the idea was originally to have Grammarly and the Berkey revealed to be on the train as well, where death would finally catch up to them. The two characters survived the famous long truck accident in Final Destination 2 and ended up being the only ones left alive at the one of the movie, as they seemingly defected death for the good. Final Destination 3 sought to shock fans with their death, continuing just how hard it is to. According to producer Clive Perry, the idea was originally to have Grimley and Beck revealed to be on the train as well, where death would finally catch up to them. The two characters survived the famous log truck accident in Final Destination 2 and they ended up being the only ones left alive at the end of the movie, as they seemingly defected death for the good. Final Destination 3. So to the shock fans with their death, communicated just how hard it is so cheat. Death is this movie, Perry resells. They were going to die the whole things up to Final Destination 2. I love the idea and we had it. They were going to idea to the whole things up to Final Destination 2. I love the idea and we had it scripted and were going to try it. We were able to get one of the two actors who were available, but the other one wants. If we could not do it all the way, we decided it was best not to die it. To have just one of them leaves an open ending which would make two sense in the death over choosing the plan. While they were unable to pull off the executing twist in the final Destination 3, Perry revealed that they knew it was a thriller idea for the franchise that could have and be used in the futures. We pocketed it because we knew that there was a really interesting idea about the cast and the fact in the world of Final Destination, and then it managed to perfectly land to Final Destination 5. Final Destination was right to leave this kind of twist until part 5. Kimberly and the bulky fat in the Final Destination franchise remains a bite of mystery that the Final Destination 3 original ending could have cleared up. However, that question is worth leaving unanswered, as the eventual use of this twist ending in the Final Destination 5 was a much more impactful way of connecting the movie while also taking it well worth the wait for the payoff. It is an ending that has gone down as the greatest twist in the franchise and has led to many fans naming the fifth movie the best Final Destination movie. Final Destination 5 ends with the survivors Sam and Molly seemingly escaped death and ready to start a new life in the pairs, only for it to be revealed they are on the same flight from the first Final Destination movie, which explodes shortly after takeoff. It is an ending that has gone down as the greatest twist in the franchise and has led to many fans naming the fifth movie the best Final Destination movie. The impact of the ending also proves that the franchise was lucky to avoid wasting such a fun twist in the third movie. While the reveal of the Grimbley and the burqa at the end of Final Destination 3 would have been a fun surprise, it never could have had the same impact as Final Destination 5 twist. To have the fifth movie suddenly go back to the first movie is a much bigger shock than a connection between the second and the third movie. There is also the added thriller of the realizing that we had been watching a prequel the entire time. There is also added thriller of the realizing that we had been watching a prequel the entire time. Also, while it might have taken fans a moment to remember Kimberly and break at the end of Final Destination 3, the sight of Alex on the plan with the Sam and the Molly instantly make it clear what is about to happen. The Final Destination movie have found a lot of success with the proof formula, but Final Destination 5 proved that it is a franchise that can still execute its audience with the sometimes completely unexpected death but not much suspense. Final Destination 3, relentless tradition of the original Death Ranger movie, which existed to kill all the Rangers in the movie except one, who was left alive to star in the sequel, explaining to fresh victims what happened at the Camp Crystal Lake, or how we know what you did last summer. In FT3, the kids learn about their possible fates because of them heard about the FT1 cause on the news. If the movie were self-aware like the Scream pictures, he would have said this is just like the movie Final Destination. The FT1 opening formula is the repeated. Some viewers may feel corrected by the ideas on the dream scenes, but fans of the series will understand as a character has a. The FT1 opening formula is the repeated. Some viewers may feel corrected by it's only a drama scenes, but fans of the series will understand the character has the premonitions of the disaster and the watchers in horror as her vision come true. Wendy Mary Elizabeth Winstead is with a group of friends at the Kremlin and they refuse to go on the roller coaster because but she convinced it will crash. It does with the many detailed scene in which Stranger climbed desperately to the upside-down coaster cars and beheaded etc. Wendy and her friend Cavani learned that the kids who did not get on the doomed airplane in the FT1 died anyway. Wendy and her friends Cavani learned that the kinds who did not get on the doomed airplane in the FT1 died anyway in the same orders they were entered to board the plane. It is the same fate in store for the kinds who did not get on the roller coaster. Wendy, who was taking digital photos and the criminal loads them into her computer and used them and use them to figure out what the like ordinary of victim will be. She and the Kevin seems Tom along with the others, which is the reason right they're not to spend the 79 to upgrade to iPhone 6. Do they all die? The point in these movies is not if they die. The fate must stay up nights devising engines, executing. There is a crashing. Do they all die? The point in these movies is not if they die, but how they die, and fate must stay up nights division ingenious exhibitions. There is a crashing experience in the takeout land at the Faber, a crispy afternoon at a tuning salon, a beheading, a gruesome death by nail gun, an unfortunately firework accident. At the end, everyone gets on a train when they should be checking into the emergency room just as a precautions. Why are teenagers attracted to movie in which strangers die? Maybe it's revealed to the basic appeal of our horror film. We sit in the audience and they think, there but for the grace of God go we. There is also reassurance that the movie. Why are strangers attacked to movie in which strangers die? Maybe it related to basic appeal of our horror films. We sat in the audience and think, there but for the grace of God go we. There but for the grace of God go we. There is also the reassurance that the movie will not continue a lot of long speeches or deep thought, and there will be a few adults in the audience to tell you to go, and there will be few adults in the audience to tell you to go the hell off your cell phone because they paid for their tickets. There must be dozens of the film in this genre. At Sundance 2006, there was a latest positive development in the Winstead's A Love Story when the characters divorced that after you killed yourself the word is. There must be dozens of film in this genre. At the Sadness 2006, there was a latest positive development in The Witcher's A Love Story when the characters discovered that after you killed yourself, the wood is pretty much the same as it was before, except hungry, poverty, stitch, and depressing. In The Witchers 2, they should have a third wood suicide victim who finds the afterlife and the improvement and the thinking he is in heaven. The problem with the FT3 is since it is clear to everyone who must die in what order, the drama is reduced to a formula in which opinion events. The problem with the FT3 is since it is clear to everyone who must die in what order, the drama is reduced to a formula in which omnia events accumulate while the strangers remain obviously. We see oil dripping, trucks rolling out of the control, hands working loose, and we realize the movie is obviously filmed from the poof of the fat itself. We see a nail gun and we start plotting which the character is next to be nailed. The problem with the FT3 is since it is the clear to everyone who must die in what order. The drama is the reduced to a formula in which omnians event accumulate while the strangers remains obviously. We see oil dripping, trucks rolling out of the control, hands working loose, and we realize the movie is obviously filmed from the poof of fat itself. We see a nail gun and we start calculating which the character is next to be nailed. Final Destination 3 is good looking and made with the twinkle skill. The director is James Wong, who made FD1 and was once a writer on The X-Files and the 21 Jump Street. He and the cinematography Robert. Final Destination 3 is good looking and made with the twinkle skill. The director is the James Wong, who made FD1 and was once a script on The X-Files and the 21 Jump Street. He and the cinematography Robert MC Leonard to do an especially good job of evoking a creepy scenes of the means on a criminal midway. Final Destination 3 is good looking and made with the technical skill. The director is James Wong, who made FD1 and was once a writer on The X-Files and 21 Jump Street. He and the cinematography Robert MC Leonard do an especially good job of evoking a creepy scenes of men's on a criminal midway. Has 3 ever been a criminal midway in movie that did not look like a sad-screeching nightmares? The ride looked fatal, the show house looked like portal to hell, And you know that game where you slam down a big hammer to make the weight fly up and hit to the bell. When Ken pounds so hard, the weight crashes through the bell and it flies off into the air. I expected it to land on the somebody. I expected it to land on somebody's head, or maybe on the roller coaster tracks, and maybe it die and I. So hard the weight crashes through the bell and the files off into the air. I expected it to land and somebody head, or maybe on the roller coaster tracks, and maybe it did not. I mistake it because there was a lot going on. But as nearly as I can find, the weight is still up there somewhere. Albert review was cut short when a wave from a criminal game crashed through the window and the wiped off the computer. Window wiped out his computer. Dan Cree, president of the Chicago Film Critical Associations, has set outpouring to the next his revenge, scheduled to write about the film. Final Destination 3 ending explaining. The Final Destination movie have a crowd out there on space in the horror pairs because of their careful subsections of the genre tropes included a traditional antagonist. The film's use of death as the underlying force opposing the protagonist add a sense of the inevitability to the narrative. In 2006, Final Destination 3, a high school graduate named Wendy Christensen, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, survived as the character that gets the premonition, managed to save herself and a few of her friends. And then, adventure sets off a chain of events where those friends start to die one by one. Realizing that she will be the last one to die, Wendy races against time to break the parent and free herself from the perspective of imminent death. Here is everything you need to know about the ending of Final Destination 3. Spoiler ahead. Final Destination 3 plot synopsis. The film begins as Wendy, her boyfriend Jason, and their friends Kevin and the career stroll around in a amusement park in the Penwell Slush, where the most popular ride in the Devil Flight roller coaster. Jason, Career, and the Kevin are looking forward to riding it, but Wendy feels a deep sense of the dread, as if something horrible is about to happen. She gets the premonitions of the all rides dying in horrible way after the hydraulic of the roller coasters. Of the all rides dying in the horrible ways after the hydraulic of the roller coaster fails. Be let off the train. Worried for her, Kevin also get off. A few others included Ashley Fruit, Ashlyn Halprin, Frankie Cheeks, Lois Romer, Erin Ulmer, and the Lan MC Kilney also get off during the competition. Deposit their attempts to get to her. Jason and the career are unable to do and they die in the same way as Wendy saw in her permission. Wendy subsequently has an emotional breakdown and fails to be let off the train. Worried for her, Kevin also get off. A few other included Ashley Freud, Ashlina Halprin, Frank Cheeks, Lewis Romer, Arn Ulmer, and the Anne McLeana also get off during the competition. Deposit their attempts to get to her. Jason and the career are unable to do and they die in the same way as Wendy saw in her permissions. What Wendy has not realized is that her sister Julia and one of her friends were also on the train and get off. Some time passes and it is revealed that Wendy has isolated herself from her friends and the family filled with the grief for Jason as well as shame and the guilt that she could not save him. She decided not to attend the graduation ceremony. She returned into Kevin, who tells her about Alex Boring from the first Final Destination film, and Flight 180 revealing that she is not the first person to whom this is happened intentionally. Special Wendy comes to believe it to be true when the survivors start dying in the same order she saw them die in her. Intentionally special, Wendy comes to believe it to be true when the survivors start dying in the same order she saw them die in her premature. Moreover, their deaths are hinted at in the last picture she look of them with her camera. Ashlina Freud and the Ashlyn Halprin are buried alive on the technique pads. In Wendy photos, they appear flame red because of too much explore in the pictures. Frankie is seen with a fan behind his head in Wendy photo. Half of his head gets chopped off by the motor from the Kevin car. Lewis Romer is standing close to the school mosquito sultan in the Wendy photos. The mosquito has a pair of the scimitars. Wendy and the Kevin visit the school gym to warn Lewis and they watch him die it front of them as the decorative scimitars fall on the block fleece machine Lewis has been using, and his head is squared between Lowe's feet. Wendy and the Kevin then try to convince Aaron and the Lan, both of whom work at the dye store, about their impending death. But like Lewis before them, they did not believe what Wendy and the Kevin are saying. In Wendy photos, Kevin is standing under a kill sign while pointing a toy gun at the end. The latter has her middle fingers up in a rude gesture with the nail painted black. Wendy realized that Lan is supposed to be killed by falling warden. Stuck there are pointed like the sign from the photo and it tackles him, in time saving his life. However, Anne is killed by a nail gun after realizing that Julia and her friends are the survive as well, and they are supposed to die because of her horse. Wendy rushes to the MC Kelly. Wendy realized that Lon is supposed to be killed by falling wooden sticks that are point like the sign from the photo, and it tackles him in time, saving his life. However, Ern is killed by a nail gun after realizing that Julia and her friends are the survive as well, and they are supposed to die because of a horse. Wendy rushes to the MC Kearney Terry sentimental fair that they are attending. Kevin is there as well, working security. Wendy and the Kevin agree that it's now time to look at their photo and see how they are supposed to die. For Wendy, it returns out that Lon will be show how include and the Kevin is fated to be killed by firework. Final Destination 3 ending. Do Wendy, Kevin, and the Julia die or they live? After Wendy, Kevin, and the Julia survive the cycle of deaths, the film skips 5 months. By then, Wendy has moved to a new city and lives with her roommate. Once more, she starts to feel that sense of dread while traveling by the subway with her roommate and the later friends. She runs into Julia, who has come to see her earlier than they expect. Suddenly, she noticed that Kevin is also there. When she and the Julia approach him to ask what he is doing there, he revealed that he was in the city for a game. This series of coincidences make Wendy realize that death has come for them. The subway train rails and the train ensures the subway train rails and the carriage ensures Julia, Kevin, and the Wendy die in the same order as they supposed to on the roller coaster. However, it revealed that it was a premonition. The real thing is just to happen. The three versions make vain attempts to stop the train or get out, but this is not a roller coaster ride that has not started yet. It is a subway train rushing toward his dorm at full speed. The film ends there without offering any detail on their fates. Winstead Wendy Christopher is perhaps the most impactful protagonist in the interior series, and her fate has become a matter of the mud decisions. Winstead herself believed that it up for the table. Winstead herself believed that it's up for the debatable. Winstead herself believed that it's up for the debate. But given the cryptomancy in which Wendy, Kevin, and the Julia are trapped, it's impossible for them to survive, and their deaths are the flushed down throughout the scene. The singer is the subway train performs Turn Around, Look at Me, and the earlier song donate to the audience that death await these characters. Moreover, the subway announcement constantly information Wendy that this is the end of the line, again implying that she is going to die on that train. Wendy and the Kevin save Julia from being dragged to her death by a runaway horse, while Wendy saves Kevin from the firework. Lon is supposed to cause Wendy death because she blames her for what happened to Iran. But as Lon is killed instead, Wendy, Kevin, and the Julia conclude the death cycle, not realizing that it can simply start all over again. Are there alternative ending to Final Destination 3? Yes, there are three alternative endings to Final Destination 3. Beside the theatrical ending in one, the film ends with the Wendy death in the subway, and it is never revealed to be a premonition in another after long death. Wendy, Julia, and the Kevin leaves the fire ground together, but not before Wendy throws away her camera and tries to destroy it. But as they are leaving, the cinema takes one more photo of them, implying that they are still part of that plan and will die in the manners they are in that last ending to Final Destination 3. Beside the theatrical ending in one, the film ends with Wendy's death in the subway, and it is never revealed to be a premonition in another after long death. Wendy, Julia, and the Kevin leaves the fire ground together, but not before Wendy throws away her camera and tries to destroy it. But they are leaving. The camera takes on more photos of them, implying that they are still part of death plan and will die in the manners they are in that last photograph. Developed like a parody, the final ending is the essential and the alternate beings. Wendy gets off the roller coaster with Jason, Kevin, and the career, and all four of them survive and go on to the lead eventful lives. Career beautiful up with the Kevin and their tents briefly for a year before becoming a group for the Doctors Without Borders. Kevin develops an unhealthy obsession with the Wendy and the briefly analysts in the military. Jason become a cult leader. As for Wendy, she embarrasses her gifts and become a professional psycho under the pseudonym Minx. On 21 March 2005, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and the Ryan Merriman co-starred the Ring 2 2005 were cast as Wendy Christensen and the Kevin Features. Winstead, who had the audition for the second Final Destination film, won the role because her portrayal of the character's emotion impacted Wong and the Morgan. Wong said he had been original. Instead, Wendy to be a spark below, and the rework and the character's light after Winstead was selected. Wong believed that actors were right for their role. He felt Winstead brought a kind of softness to her role as Wendy, and through her characters is deeply affected by their accident. Her strength allowed her to remain in cool. Wong said when Merriman arrived to auditions, he was sure he was the right guy to play Kevin. He described the characters was the kind of the gay you want to hang out with. Your goofy best buddy, who also someone who could rise the occasions and become a hero. On 9 April 2005, Chris Lematch and the Alex Johnson were cast the goth couple McLeana and the Aaron Elmer. Johnson, who was starting in the Canada television series Instant Star 2004 to 2008, and the audition to play Wendy's sister Julia. That role later went to Amanda Crew, who originally auditioned to the play Aaron. Johnson said she wore a rocker jacket during her second reading and was in a bad mood. As she was leaving, the filmmakers called her back. To read some of the Aaron sarcastic dialogues in her scenes. Johnson, through her dry scenes of humor, which the filmmakers caught, helped her land the part of his role. Lemmy said Lance put some interesting facts that seemed to be just right there on the tips of his fingers. He researched most of the land information, and during read through often asked Morrison about land fact. Morrison wrote Lemme's note and they gave him URLs to research the information Lon gives out. Jason Moss was cast as Wendy's boyfriend Jason Weiss. Texas Battle played athlete Louis Romer. Clyde Kismoser took the role of the Ashlina Freud. Sam Esther portrayed school alums Frank Cheese. Gina Holden played Kevin girlfriend and the Wendy best friend, Career Drill. Christopher Lord joined the cast, and the student Ashlyn Halpern, who appeared in the first two films, did not return as the Motrain. Both worked but voiced the Devil State, the roller coaster, and a subway co-directed. Magic as a estate. Magic Mia and the estate. Sunday plays Julia Franz, Pre, Malico, and the Amber regions, respectively. Filming and the fact, like the first of the installment of the franchise, Final Destination 3 was the film in the walkovers. Crystal Lloyd joined the cast as student Ashlina Halpern. Tony Todd, who appeared in the first two films, did not return as the Moreton Bloodworth but voiced the Devil's Dad as the roller coaster and a subway conductor. Magic Me and the State, Stampers played Julia Friend, Pre-Milnovic and the Amber region respectively. Pre-Melnivisk and the Amber region respectively. The Final Destination. As Ronan Keating once so adroitly observed, life is a roller coaster and would you believe it? So it transpires is death. Safety harness click, hydraulic hisses, and the camera differs through the bones of the crenel. Ride that has not started moving yet but already feels wrong. Final Destination 3 opens in that most evident temple to the joy of terror. The funfair what better place for the dead to set into motions one of his rope. Gilbert mentions that a criminal of the fireground machine, operated by bots and the held together by Rex, leg and a bite of the cube gem. There is a special kind of demency in that are interested to feel dangerous. By redesign, this time death planes go off the rails, or rather don't when the premonitions hit as Wendy. Mary Elizabeth Winstead and her friends are the squawking for the devil's flight. The criminal hurling steel coaster when division is not just about the being flung off the track. It's about watching the people around her die in the seeking. Hyper specify ways. If Final Destination Weeping, Paranoid and the Final Destination 2 in Jane Chow. The Final Destination 3 is the control group, Tiger more connected and the fascinated with the machines of how things go wrong. Death is the wrong and the getting creative. Mary Elizabeth Winstead entered the film with war more posy than it probably deserved, elevated what could have been a green rated into some things that still holds together. Her Wendy is not a profit. Her Wendy is not a prophet or the rescuer as the coaster. She just a scare and the film is the smart enough to let that to be enough. Paired with the Ryan Merriman as the recurrent co-survive Kevin, the film lands back into the first entry to ender dynamic, ashing the resemble anxiety of the sequel for something more intimate. The deaths are more stylish this time and offer more absurd but never less crew. The infamous standing bed scene. For all its exhibitions framing its struggle with cruel precipice, it's not about the files or the fire, it's about continue. Once the lid comes down, three no escape, and that idea that you might already be inside the trap, even in the most murdered place. Continue to each other the film set pieces, especially with the deaths are more stylish this time and often more absurd, but never less crew. The infamous staining bed scene. For all its expletive framing, it's the struggle with the cruel pressure. It's not about the flash or the fire. It's about content. Once the lid comes down, there's no escape, and that idea that you might already be inside. Even the most murdered places continue to each other. The film set pieces, especially with death, having decided to fully embrace a slay iron with this corrective change. Tonally, it does not quite split the difference between the first two. The sense of grand design is as sharp, and the Mayhouse gets a bite loose around the daggers. Not helped by the absence of the Tony Todd's Bloodworth, whose cryptic monoglyphs give the first two interiors their sometimes get drunk on the spatule, forever energy overglassing. There shifts in the portrayals here, not the betrayal of what came before, but a sign that franchise is starting to enjoy its reputations. But for all its tightening budget and the increasing artificial, Final Destination 3 still receptive the rules. Death is still a force, not a face. The scene of the pattern of logic of cruel mathematics still plus under death. It's film that they understand the sharp of the series, even if it plays a little fast and the loose with the detail. What keep it interesting is that even three film in, it's still trying to show you something new about how thinking fall apart. And it helped that it looked good doing. Wasted his directive, big screen pressure and the cinematography, though glosser keep enough. And it helped that it looked good doing it twisted and the directive, big screen presence and the cinematography. though Glossary keep enough eddies to stop it sliding into self-parody. It may not be as iconic as the second film or as background as the first, but it's more than just an echo. Their purpose here and the emergency of the darkly humorous track, even if the system starting to crack. Final Destination 3 make the smart move and stick to the formula strength. It keeps the grease turning, the traps premier, and the scene that death, always paint, always watching is starting to have a little fun. Final Destination 3 directed by James Wong starting Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ryan Merriman, Harris Alian, Texas, better rating 2 star. I like to think I am a normal guy. I enjoy most of my classic. I like a good party. I even go to crash on Sunday. However, it Final Destination 3. I could not help but it entertaining to see people getting killed in ways only Dragon, screenwriter to Stone, Moritans could think up. The formula of this movie is the familiar to most viewers by now. The protagonist, in this case a semi-dog, yearbook editor named Wendy, forces a terrible accident, tries to prevent the accident and saw a select ground of people. Then as the movie progresses, each member of the select group dies in a gory, ridiculous way. You don't even really need characters with name in this movie because you are just waiting for them to die. Which they certainly do. This film is one of the goriest I have never seen. However, unlike movies such as Saw or The Hostel, the deaths are mostly. The film is one of the goriest I have ever seen. However, unlike movies such as Saw or Hostel, the deaths are mostly quick. Every single death in the film had the audience screaming, laughing, or the walking out of theaters. The death scenes are fun to watch because the audience know they are coming and the filmmakers do a good job of showing how an insignificant thing such a slavery are lead to trouble death. Beside the entertaining death, the film is as a decider of the epic properties. Every characters in high school perfectly fit the stereotypical role. We all know there are the stupid girls who obsess over their tans and are quick, show off their bread. The vulnerable pimp who only saw things like show me your titles. Plus the rebel a cool joke, sensitive joke and the anyone else you could think of. It is as if the filmmaker took all the characters from not another teen movie and put them in. Beside the entertaining death, the film is as a visitor of epic promoting. Every character in the high school perfectly fit the stereotypical roles as well known. They are stupid girls who obsess over their tans and are quick show off their breasts. The Vonette pimps who only saw things like show me your titles plus the rebel alcohol jokes, sensitive jokes and anyone else you could think of. It is as if the filmmaker took all the Career for the Not Anywhere teen movie and put them in a real movie. Every time line of the dialogues that come out there, month would make a television, radio and the film professor in SI Never House School of the Public Communication throw up in his or her extra large popcorn tube. It's a shame the film falls is everything but the death because you can't tell the filmmakers are trying. The opening sequence on the roller coaster is very well done. Mixing live action and special effects, the movie builds suspense for each death by having clues down in pictures the protagonists take before the roller coaster ride. The idea ultimately falls. Because only some of the photo reveal the. It's shame the film falls in everything but the death because you can't tell the filmmakers are trying. The opening sequence on the roller coaster is very done, mixing live action and special effects. The movie builds suspense for each death by having clues hidden the pictures the protagonists take before the roller coaster ride. The idea ultimately falls because only some of the photo reveal the death and some are much more obsessed than others. Final Destination 3 would have been more enjoyable if it only contained the horrible death. The story is the useless and survives simply as a device for more blood, and unless you are craving for gore, don't go see this movie. How about inside of watching people die on screen? You have your money for the Valentine Day. You save your money for the Valentine Day You save your money for the Valentine Day and celebrate the joy life with someone. I find it interesting how often I came across this title as the best of the series when I did not see much difference in the balance of the quality here for the first two films. Much like with the FD2, this is the another one I like for different reasons and the dislike for the various reasons. But it all boils down to what I consider a perfectly passable horror movie. It's nothing incredible special, especially as a third chapter in a series, but certainly as enjoyable as any Friday or the Jason flick that was fun to them I can't deny. Like so many horror series, for the past Final Destination has become mainly about the opening, promotion and the accident that follow. Like so many of my god favorite slasher flick, it's also about how bad is the terrifying the kills are. I have developed a base for the series as a group of thrilling popcorn movie not meant to be taken seriously. This chapter is also more self-aware considering like so many horror series for the past Final Destination have become mainly about the opening, promotion and the accident that follow. Like so many of my all favorite slasher flick, it also about how baddies or the terrifying the kills are. I have developed a basic for this series as a group of thrilling popcorn movie not meant to be taken seriously. This chapter is also more self-aware considering some characters in that respect that takes a step backwards as FD2 and a more diverse group of would-be victims. Here we have what I call basic horror meat. Wendy Christensen, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, her boyfriend Jason Weiss, her mother best friend Carrie Drall, and the caring boyfriend Kevin Features all visit Playland Amusement Park with the survival other classmate as a graduation trip. This time Wendy has a premonition about the devil-fied roller coaster they are about to ride. For me, this is the scariest of the all FD incident because what happens through it the previously the reason apart from a crippling fear of the heights that I did not ride a coaster. All this movie did was legitimately nail that fear into my brain, so I must give it some screw credit. Wendy managed to get her worrying out by picking to let everyone off the ride, but some get refused as the ride need to, going for the disappointed passengers who assume Wendy on some things. Sure enough, the accident happens, survival people die, survival more escape their fate, and the some basic plot of doing that continue, but for the redness, as I make it all sound, as for as much I saw how middle ground it feels, I can fully credit the film more than I can criticize. And though I may not find it to be the best scenes of the series, it's undoubtable one of the Wendy managed to get there her vending out by picking to let everyone off the ride, but some get refused as the ride needs to get going for the disappointed passengers. We assume Wendy something sure enough. The accident happens, survival people die, survival more escape their fate, and the same basic plot of the doing that continue, but for the redness as I make it all sound. And for as much as I saw how middle ground it feels, I can fully credit the film more than I can criticize it. And though I may not to find to be the best of the series, it's the undoubtable one of the better. Aside from the credited for making me feel just as I set out to with the roller coaster inside, there is a thing or two more to the film I throw enjoyable. For example, even though these bring in the stereotypes as I mentioned, it's easier to get in the mood of the routine of their skills and feels a bit more like watching a Friday the 13th chapter this time. So it's hard to say what I think about that escape. It another case of me being okay with it, but people will find it an odd, subtle concept and therefore giving the file fever point. If the film has something that stick out from the other things for it's the emotion project by Winstead complaining action. Wendy was a chapter what really made me feel her loose as people starting trying. She takes it to a dramatic level that has not quite been a part of this movie yet. On top of it all, this ending is just plain awesome, fully illustrating what these movies are all about. It also makes James Wong return to the series, which made it feel more like the first, and he does not complicate it thing in any way. simplify things a bit more from FD2. Even if I don't think this is the best of the series, it's certainly up there, and I feel like I had better time watching this one than the first two, even with the criticize often claiming this as second toss. The roller coaster accident is so much what made it hit me through as that such a deep fear for me. Also thanks for the Winstead is the who I consider the best lead actor in the series. She very convincing and the adds and the element of the horror with her panic to an already horrifying scene. So all me boring call me a wish but don't expect me to board a roller coaster with a group anytime soon.